Hey everybody, thank you for joining us and welcome to a special edition of Survivor Talk with D&D. I'm David, and unfortunately Dwayne is not here. Hey, that's really not necessary. We don't need applause for that announcement. But unfortunately Dwayne is partly under the weather and partly rescheduled at this point. But fortunately, I am joined by two amazing people. One I've known for quite a while, one I got to know personally this past summer in a very incredible experience, and I want to introduce them both to you right now. So first, I'll go with of the Baker's Dozen on TrueDorkTimes.com. There's a lot of other stuff to say about him, but I'll just say Andy Baker.
Hey everybody, it's always good to be back, and I've written about it in the blog, and I constantly talk about it whenever I show up on this show. It's nice to actually be able to sit down and actually talk about the DWSC and just have some dedicated time to do it, because I know a bunch of your listeners ended up applying, you can't talk about this thing enough, so it's nice to have the time.
Outstanding. And then our second guest, if you've ever watched the finale and seen the white-haired guy smiling, this season it was in the front row of the back section. I saw him quite a few times, it seems like, or at least I saw pictures of him. He's all around the finales. He's all over Survivor because he's as big a fan as we are, if not bigger. He's also one of the architects of, or probably the architect of, the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge. He is Jon Fataha, and I have to admit that I have been saying his name backwards for quite a while, swapping the H and the T. So I'll just apologize with that now and get it out of the way, and which is probably why I got voted out. But go ahead and say hi, Jon.
Well, hello, it's good to be here. I've heard so much about D&D, watched some podcasts over the years, but this is my first time being live with you. So looking forward to some talk about DWSC.
And I guess the wall challenge is over. Jon's wall by far defeats my book wall, and because my setup time got cut in half when I had to run to work today, and Andy's wall is a clean slate, which is probably how he starts all of his writings. So, but yes, this is a podcast to talk about the Durham Warriors Survival Challenge, which Andy and I have both competed in. Of course, Jon has been to all three, and he is the Propsian host of the challenge up in Maine. And first, just to let folks know more about the challenge, Jon, I'm going to turn it over to you and let you tell us all how it got started and where this all began.
Well, as you can probably tell by my backdrop here, I've been a Survivor nut since the very beginning, which has included applying to the show since, I think, Africa. And as you mentioned, I've been to, I think I've been in the audience for the last 13 finales now. And when you get out there, you start to run into all these other Survivor nuts. And we all talk about how we've applied and we want to get on. And most of us are white guys over age 40, and we've come to the conclusion it's probably never going to happen to us. And I thought, wouldn't it be a really cool experience that we could put something together and actually go play Survivor in the woods sometime? So it went from like a passing idea to a point where I actually started looking around at plots of land where we could go play Survivor in the woods. And this was still rolling through my head. I guess it was back in 2012. I was down at the Give Kids the World charity event in Florida, and I happened to sit at a table with Bob Crowley, and he asked me what was going on, and I just kind of dumped this idea out on the table about doing a Survivor event for superfans. And Bob looks at me and says, "Hey, you know what? I just retired, and I've got 100 acres of land up in Maine. Let's talk." And out of that little poolside conversation, we started gathering some people together, said, "Can we really do this thing?" And the following August, which would have been 2013, was DWSC 1. And it went over so well that a lot of our first-year competitors came back and volunteered. And year 2 happened, and then David, obviously, you got to be a part of year 3. So here we are now talking about 2016 and year 4 coming up.
Wow, that's quite a stretch there. So you're from Arizona, right?
I am now. Yeah, I've been here for 3 years. This all started actually when I was back in Pennsylvania.
Okay, I was going to say, because I can see Bob saying, "Drive on over, across the country, just for a couple trips, and we'll have fun in my backyard."
Sure.
Because that's really what it is Bob's backyard, and you couldn't have, that's such an awesome setup that you two met about this, because you couldn't have found a nicer couple of people, a nicer family, for that matter. My greatest thing coming out of season 3 was I went there to make new friends and meet survivors, and I felt like I was leaving my family when I left. It's just such an awesome experience and such a closeness, because everybody's there to compete to some degree, but at the same time everybody's there to meet, and you're talking to survivor nuts like yourselves, and for the whole weekend, and it's just an awesome experience to go through. So
yeah, I'm constantly struck by the serendipity involved in all of that. You know, Bob's retiring, he's got the land, John's got the idea, and Bob and the members of his family and his circle of friends, like they all have these skill sets that suddenly came together. You've got Kevin Thurber, who just wants to one-up Survivor in making challenges, and you just have this brain trust that I knew coming off of year 1 that, okay, they pulled this amazing thing off. Anyone should want to do this thing, and we keep wanting to sort of up the ante, but it's amazing that it came together in the first place, just sort of how it did, and then what it's become since then. It kind of just blows the mind.
Yeah, when Andy first brought it up in one of our podcasts and talking about it privately, I went right to the website just to see exactly what he was talking about, because it couldn't be all that he was talking about. The challenges couldn't have been all that. The experience couldn't have been all, and I couldn't stop watching the videos. And the worst part is the videos don't do it justice. It's still even better than what the videos say it's going to be, because you see all the challenges, you see the running, you see the tribals, you see the voting, and it's still 10 times even better than what you see on the videos. So making the videos is the challenge in itself. It being there, even as a spectator, being there is just such an awesome experience. John, is it growing faster than what you thought it would, or it's just about what you were expecting?
I really had no vision of it becoming the size of an event that it actually is. I mean, for me, it was just, let's get a bunch of people to go out and play Survivor. And we never really spend time thinking, how big is this going to get? The pace of growth has been crazy. And it's really all about the volunteers and how well it's been received by not only the contestants that have been in the game, but the survivors who have come out and had a great experience, and they've promoted it for us as well. And there's no way we could have anticipated all that. We thought we were putting together a great weekend experience for Survivor fans. No way did I expect we'd have over 70 applicants last year who would want to pay their own way to Maine and donate $300 to charity just to have this 4-day experience. So not in my wildest dreams would I thought we'd be where we are right now. And Andy alluded to it. It couldn't be this big without the team of folks that put it together. We had over 75 volunteers last year. Everything from people who are carpenters to people who are just great with coming up with challenge ideas, people who go and get food arranged. Just anything you can imagine is covered by a volunteer group, which enables it to get to the size that it has.
Yeah, if this is your first time hearing about this and you have not seen any pictures or videos, then you're definitely not on my Facebook group. But otherwise, then you need to go to the website. What is the website, John?
It's DurhamWarriorsChallenge.com. That's DURHAM. That's the name of the town in Maine where Bob lives, where the challenge is held.
Right, and on that page you'll see pictures, you'll even read some testimonies as well as the videos, and you just get sucked into the whole nature of it all. Right now, Season 1 is partly up there, Season 2 is partly up there, and I can't wait. And I asked some of the folks that were in my family, my Season 3 family, do y'all have any questions? Do y'all have any things? And they say, when is it going to be online? When's the story going to be online? When's the video going to be online? That's what these people want to see. So I guess before they throw themselves on the mercy of the court with questions, they want to see how they come across and how they're portrayed. So do y'all have any ideas of when that stuff is going to be online?
Well, I can speak to some of it. We had a draft of a trailer for your guys' season, and we're doing some revisions now. It looks great. We wanted just something a little more, a few more shots added, a little more representation of the whole event, that should be put together pretty quickly. Jon has put together a great step-by-step breakdown of the event, and actually one of our players from last year, Kristen, is curating the photos so that we can have that up in the immediate future. I'm in the middle of writing my story. Kristen's actually getting some photos from me as well, and she said she can get them next weekend. So it's going to be fast and furious at this point because we're at a critical point in our production schedule where the application is going to be going live, and so we want everybody to be able to see the stories, see the pictures, see some video. Like you said, I mean, there was a very funny moment when we were out for the finale when we're waiting in line to go in, and I was talking with Jon and talking with Bob, and Bob had been there and everywhere pulling up the trailer for my season, and you could just hear the music starting off in the distance, like, oh, Bob's showing the video again. It hooks people because people you tell them, oh yeah, in Maine we have this Survivor thing, and you can see the look in their eyes like, oh, that's quaint, and then they see it and they're like, oh my God, I need to know more, and so that's where the videos come in. And I mean, we're all junkies for. I mean, you see it in the people who play the real game. We're all junkies to see ourselves. We have our fingers crossed that we're going to get a good edit, but. It's neat to sort of see it all come together. I mean, just watching some of the confessionals, it brings you right back there. I mean, at this point, I just want to plop down and just watch all the confessionals just to bring it all coming back. And I know the feeling that you're going to have when you see this trailer. It hits you it's a shot to the gut that takes you back there. I can't wait to hear what you guys think when you see it and when you read the stories.
Go ahead.
Part of what we're dealing with, David, obviously I mentioned the volunteer staff, and among that staff are the folks compiling video, and I think we had 5 different videographers on site last year, and so somebody had the wonderful task of taking probably over 1,000 hours worth of footage and needing to go through that and put it in some meaningful format with Andy's guidance. So these are folks that have real jobs as well, and we're kind of relying on them to put this all together. So it's part of the growing pains of the Durham Warriors Challenge. It's great that we've got all this footage and, I don't know, 5,000 photographs or something like that, but somebody's got to go through it all. And that's kind of where we are right now. And we would have loved to have it done already, but our volunteers are doing the best they can. So like Andy said, we're hoping over the next couple of weeks to hit you guys with a fire hose worth of stuff coming out all at once.
That's all right. I know how you feel because having a regular day job is what caused us not to start at 3 o'clock today. So I apologize for anybody that was here early, but that's my fault that we delayed. When Andy was saying that watching it and reading it all brings it all back, I wanted to substitute breaks your heart when you see the confessionals and hear what you were thinking at the time and know how delusional you are, which was my buddy Dwayne's favorite line for me. He's so delusional. He was very quick to take my confessional and then wave goodbye to me, and then very quick to tell Jordan that I was as delusional as the day is long. So he got a nice kick out of that.
Well, see the funny thing is, and this is sort of jumping ahead a little bit, but when you're out there and doing confessionals with people, it's a very strong reminder that this is a game of Survivor that people are playing. There are 24 people and 24 different stories all surrounding some truth that has yet to unfold, frankly. And so no one is delusional. They just know whatever pieces they know of the story. I mean, like, I'm reviewing my notes and it's all coming back. And I remembered in your case, David, that if you had seen some of the confessionals we had seen leading into when we talked to you on maybe Friday night, you would have known that people were already saying, well, this guy's too smart, we got to target him. You don't know that because everyone's being nice to your face, and so you're not delusional. You're just playing off of what you got to go on. And so being on the production side of things, it's fascinating because, I mean, I had sort of this enviable position where I had, tribe handlers coming and feeding me information, and I was there for all the confessionals. And so having a more comprehensive story, it made me really appreciate the pieces that everybody had and what they were trying to do with those pieces. It's fascinating.
Yeah. Before we get into too much of the days and the nights, do you want to say something about the charity that this all supports?
Yeah, Bob started this charity right about the same time we started talking about the event. So it was a really nice dovetail because it had a instant connection. Where is our donation money going to go? And it's called the Durham Warriors Project. So similar name to ours, but it's a different organization altogether. And what it is it's really founded by Bob's family, and they have a business on their property that has yurts that they rent out to the public. But what the Durham Warriors Project does is makes those yurts available to active duty and retired military and their families to come out and have a weekend for free in the woods in Maine. And Bob and his family are great hosts, and they'll come and spend time with them and give them the lay of the land. And anybody who loves Survivor gets to speak with Bob for hours on end around a campfire while they're there. But the Durham Warriors Project helps fund all of that happening on Bob's property for the military and their families.
That's awesome. I love that we get our taste of Survivor. For those of us that'll probably never get on the show, we get a weekend, we get to meet survivors, we get to meet other super fans, but at the same time, all of this is grounded into a charity, and everything goes towards a charity. All the volunteer work is to support the charity, and it's such an awesome backdrop for the whole thing. Now, are you still going to have, for this coming season, the highest money raiser gets a guaranteed spot?
We are, and that will be on the website once we relaunch it. It'll be a similar format to last year, and we'll explain that all on the webpage, but that feature will be there again this year.
Awesome, good to know.
Yeah, and just to sort of piggyback on that I know that in this last game it was someone from both times that there have been it's been returning players who have raised the money to do it, but it can be anybody. So if you're feeling like maybe I'm not going to get cast, or you just wanted to guarantee a spot, people can raise money, and it really is a great cause. I just wanted to stress two things. One, I mean, the whole Crowley family is involved in this, and they are just fantastic people. And Bob and Peggy in particular go out of their way to relate to us the stories of people who got to stay in the yurts thanks to all the work that the volunteers do and all of the work for the charity. And it's just a great reminder sort of what we're doing it for. It's nice to know it all goes for something great.
All right, so before we get into describing it, at least from my recollection, and Andy, you can recollection season 2, and John can talk about 1, when did you guys start planning? And I'm guessing right after Wendy picked up her lobster. Is that when y'all started planning for 2016?
We actually, while we were planning for your season last year, David, there was a lot of ideas that come up, and we say, hey, you know what, that's a good one, but it's not going to fit this year because we already have a full slate. So we already had some notes before we even get to thinking about the season, which are leftovers from prior years. But we try to take maybe about 3-4 weeks off to just let it all settle in, give everybody a chance to decompress a little, write down some notes, what went well, what can we still do better. And it's amazing when you see it from the back end, because most of the people come out of the game and just say, oh, that was just great, everything was perfect. And in the meantime, we're like, if you only saw all the list of things that we wrote down that didn't go right. So we take a little time, and then I guess it was the beginning of October, we had our first conference call to start planning for 2016. So, we took a little more than a month off, and when we got back, it was amazing. It was like everybody was refreshed. It also gives people a little bit of a chance to forget about all of the little stuff that was a nuisance right at the end of the challenge, and we like to start off with, let's just talk about all the commentary that we've gotten since the event ended. All of you guys said a lot of nice things. We made sure we circulated the Facebook posts. The survivors said a lot of good things. And we just kind of start by re-energizing ourselves with reminding ourselves, this is a great experience for all the people involved. So let's not get hung up on all the little details. Because as a production crew, it's real easy to get mired down in all of that stuff.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories from this event, and Jon and I were talking about this earlier this week, that there was a moment when sort of how things were unfolding at the very beginning, and we can dig into it more later, but things were just falling apart a little bit, just from my perspective, and I'm having a mini freak out because you just want it to go well. And Jon and his daughter Jen pulled me aside and said, "Okay, Andy, now you played last year. How did the opening go for you? How did everything unfold at the beginning? It was great. It was perfect. I mean, that's why this is bothering me so much. It's because last year was perfect." They're like, "No, there was all kinds of stuff going haywire. You just weren't aware of it because you were in the game. Don't worry about it. Nobody knows anything." And it really was small stuff, but it feels like big stuff because you care so much about planning for everything. But it does take some time to sort of move past all of that and the little hang-ups, and then just at the end, I had the benefit, as you know, of doing exit interviews, and so I got to have these small moments of closure with all of the players and see how meaningful it was to them, and that's the thing that keeps you coming back. And that's those early phone calls in October were about, let's talk about the fact that we had a guy like Bob who doesn't say a lot, but this was a guy at the end, there were tears in his eyes, and he just wanted a hug. He had this amazing experience, something he wasn't expecting to have. And those are the things we talk about at the beginning as we're sort of talking, and then we move into the things that we want to improve. But we just have to remember what we accomplished.
Yeah, it's funny because he also had about 150 Mainers cheering his every move. Every time he knocked one of Troyzan's tiles with one rock, and everything else involved. But before we even get to the weekend, then let's go back to casting. Which, first of all, let me publicly say thank you for letting me play in season 3. And what you did not see when you saw those wonderful Facebook posts were the private Facebook posts that are in the group of the 24. We have our own little Facebook group now that it's just us 24. Not even Dwayne's in it. And it's nothing but love in that group. We couldn't shut up for the first 2 or 3 months. Yep. We kept talking about stuff, and then it became personal, where people were asking how kids are doing and how other things are doing. And it's amazing. We only got to know each other for 4 days, and we're in our own Facebook chat, and it's a daily update of things being said and commented on. So this is another thank you from me for letting me meet 23 amazing people, including 6 survivors that are in the group. And we just talk on a sometimes daily basis about life. And it's the neatest thing. I talk to these people like I've known them for years. And I cannot wait to see them in June. I can't wait to get 23 hugs in June from these people that I'm hoping all of them can make it. But how long and how stressful is the casting process? You said there were over 70 for this past season. So not including survivors, you had to come up with 18 out of the 70-plus applications that you got.
Yeah, that's right. It's really last year was the first time we actually had a casting, we called it our casting department, which was Andy and Mike and I. Prior to that, it was basically me. And the first year, it was me calling a bunch of my survivor friends saying, hey, you need to come to Maine. I was trying to get 18 warm bodies into the woods. So that was the criteria for year 1. Year 2, we had about 30 applications. So again, we didn't even have enough to field equal number of men and women. So the second year, again, was more scarcity than anything else, just trying to put together a reasonable cast. But then last year, all of a sudden, all these are rolling in, and I had to reach out to Andy and Mike and said, you know what, we need some organization around this. I'm going to need some help. And we don't have a strategy, per se, going in. We've been through this whole thing with supplying to Survivor ourselves, and we kind of know how every year they kind of follow the casting cookie cutter, and you see the same 18 people with different faces. And we pretty much said to ourselves, we're not doing that. You know, we're looking for true hardcore Survivor fans, and that's our criteria. And we didn't have necessarily all of the same tools that Survivor has in terms of having a 3-minute video and all that. So we spent a lot of time trying to extract information from people's written applications, and we did go out to people's Facebook pages and try to check them out there and gather a little bit more information to see what's going on. So this year, I guess I can probably say this, we are going to require a video submission, because we're really trying to get down to who really wants to do this event. Because as you know, David, you got out there and game was on immediately, and it's because of the group of folks that we put around you. Yeah. And that's what we're trying to do every year. We want this experience, because we've only got 4 days. We want it to be as intense as possible, and getting the right folks on board for that is what makes that happen. So, you know, Andy has a perspective on it, and so does Mike, and the three of us kind of pull our heads together, and we come back with a final recommendation for our larger planning group, and made a few tweaks to that at the last minute last year, and then we go with it. So that's kind of the overview, Andy.
Yeah, a few things. One, just to give him a shout out and give him his proper due. It's when we say Mike, we're talking about Big Mike. Albright. He obviously is very big in the Survivor community, and he's such a fantastic addition when it comes to not only casting, but I mean, he was obviously a key part of the confessionals this past year. But also, just backing up 1 second, when you say, David, about the Facebook group, there's still a Facebook group going for my season, and Bezo as a tribe, we talk all the time. That's part of what this is you become a part of a family. Jared, who played in my season, he had a baby, and everyone was excited, and we're seeing all the baby pictures. And Jersey Mike is having a baby, and he's going to be bringing her out. Our whole tribe was there actually this past summer, except for Jersey. Anyway, one thing I wanted to bring up about the whole casting process that Jon mentioned, but David, you touched on it when you said thank you for having you in the cast. One of the things that you did, which helps immeasurably, is having really thoughtful answers. Your answers were killer, and everyone could get a sense of who you were when we got to the end of the application. It makes our job a lot easier when we have more involved answers. And part of the whole casting process, we just finished the process of revising our questions, and we added the whole video piece so that we can get a real sense of who everybody is. We feel like in your cast we did, but we didn't have as comprehensive a picture as I think we would have wanted to. We took a few flyers here and there. We made some last-minute tweaks, and obviously it came together beautifully. But we want to, as best we can, take some of the luck out of the equation. The game's going to be what the game's going to be, but those thoughtful answers and getting a sense of, I think the video is going to be so key in just letting us see who they are as people, as they're talking to a camera, as they're trying to present themselves. And Jon can speak to this, but last year, we started with let's look at last year, and then we started looking at challenges, which is sort of what we've been doing the last several months, and everything gets reinvigorated in January, because once you start seeing applications, you start getting a real sense like, oh, this is going to come together. We have some people now. We have some people to mess with in the woods. It's great. And so I can't wait for the applications to start coming in.
Well, I could just say that the 23 people that I met, well, actually the 17, the survivors were incredible as they were, but even just the 17 other fans that I met really covered the spectrum, from the outgoing alphas to the silent bobs. And the others, they cover the whole spectrum of the fans of Survivor. There was nobody out there saying, oh, I just heard about this, and they called me last minute to come play. I'm not even sure what I'm doing here. but everybody knew something about Survivor to some degree. There were some super fans that found out they weren't quite super fans, and there were some regular fans that found out that they were more so. And there were some physical studs that realized I can get through the game this way, and there were some folks that thought they were, and to me got caught up in the strategy of the game itself, which is what made it so fun.
Just so you know, there was one person who got a call the day before.
Oh yeah. He got a call the day of, I thought.
Yeah. Well, it was that morning, wasn't it?
But he's a super fan, and
yes,
he wanted to play. Yeah.
Oh yeah, no. He was Matt was a fantastic last minute addition, and we obviously we look for a mix. There are certain people, and I'm sure it's the case with the real casting people for the real show. Certain people just pop. And so when Mike and Jon and I, had our first conversation after sort of going through all the applications, it's like these people are in. Like they pop so hard, we have to find a way to have these people in there. And then there were debates about, certain, we were looking for gender 50-50, and, I think it's a real feather in the cap of the event that we did that this past year. That's sort of one of the steps in the evolution of the game. Mm-hmm. And I think we wanted a mix of ages and a mix of, how much people knew about the show. But in general, like there are those pockets, like Jon said at the beginning, over 40 white males. We had a bunch of those who were wanting to play, and so when you're getting down to sort of splitting of hairs, we're sort of debating, and I think we all ended up with this newfound respect for what the Survivor casting people are called on to do. I mean, we had 70, they have 7,000. It's orders of magnitude harder for them, but at the same time, once you start doing the Probstian thing of you start laying the pictures out on a table and start envisioning how do these people come together and who do we want where, that's where it starts to become very real and really fascinating.
Yeah, we had I don't know if we've ever said this publicly anywhere, but we had applicants from more than half the states. I think 26 different states were represented. And we had applicants as young as kids in high school. Mm-hmm. We had to actually have a conversation and say, geez, we don't have a rule. Can we take these kids? They're under 18. And all the way up to people over 60. So it was the first time we could look at this broad spectrum of people. But as this event becomes more well known, the other thing we're looking for, I'm consider myself an old school Survivor guy, and the idea of people coming in with pre-alliances isn't something that I ever want to happen. So part of what we're doing out there on Facebook is we're trying to suss out are there people that know each other, and it's not that contestant A and contestant B are both worthy. But if they know each other and we know about it, probably only one of the two of you are going to get in the game. And I would imagine that going forward, that's going to be, we've got lots of friends that we meet at events, and they all come up to me separately and say, hey, Jon, I'm sending in my application for next year. And I'm like, oh, great, but that guy standing right next to you, he just told me the same thing 5 minutes ago. And, so now we're looking, that's the reason we're evolving now into the video and some of the other stuff. It's becoming harder and harder now to distinguish between a couple of really well-qualified candidates, especially if they might know each other. So we're actually anticipating a bit of hard work. The window is going to be from early next week when we launch the application, maybe midweek, till the end of February. And because the event's in June, our timeline's a little bit compressed this year. So Andy and Mike and I already looked at our calendars and said, end of February comes, we're going to have some work to do. I wouldn't be surprised if we're into the hundreds in terms of applications.
Wow. The first night, I think I said in my first confessional, my first task was to learn everybody's name and what state they're from. And you guys really covered the spectrum. We had Kristen from California, and I think Tino's from Arizona, Lisa's from Utah, and then Carl's from Louisiana. So you guys really covered a lot of states. That's really good for just the third year. And of only 70 people, you had such a wide variety of people that it just added to it because, 17, 18 people from Maine playing together would have been like everybody playing in the backyard. And that's the next part I want to talk about is for those that are coming out, it's not just 4 days of camping and competing in egg toss, which is I think what Troyzan was thinking or Joel was thinking when they were first coming out there, because they reached out and said, hey, what am I stepping into? What am I getting involved in? And it's not just camping and games, but it's Survivor. It's the challenges are sped up. I love talking to Troyzan because on Saturday he was sucking wind about every time between a challenge because he would lay down between each challenge and I'd say, are you all right? Because I was hoping he was going to quit, so I'd be one less person to vote out, but he didn't. But he said, dude, this is like the real thing, except we had like 2 days between challenges. These challenges are like every 30, 40 minutes. So, I mean, he was, and of course I should have been paying attention and eating whatever he ate and resting whenever he rested. But at the same time, he said, dude, these challenges are legit. So hats off to Kevin and his crew and everybody that came up with those challenges, and the way they built them was amazing. But at the same time, the game started for me, obviously, before the game started with my studying of facts and trying to learn things and trying to guess about things, studying previous videos, which thank you, Kevin, by the way, for using like one challenge from last year that we could use to our advantage. But that was amazing that he came up with all new challenges, with only a couple of repeats. And the one he repeated were awesome. He had to use those. But at the same time, the game started for me before I even got off the plane, which I barely made. Thanks, won't mention that airlines. But but even as soon as I got the blindfold on, that's when the sweat started falling. Before then I was thinking, contemplating, trying to look, knowing I wasn't supposed to look. And then my buddy Lou wants to give me the blindfold. Said, all right, David, from this point on, say nothing. Nobody's going to talk to you except tell you where to go. And you're to talk to nobody. Blindfolded, not look at anybody, but the blindfold came on and it started. And we didn't even get a meet and greet from Jon. The first thing we got from Jon was get on the barge and paddle as fast as you can. So it's really fun how it hits. But I want to know what it was like for you guys building up for this, and what is the stress you're talking about? All you guys had to do was watch.
Yeah, that's it. It gets back to the discussion we started earlier about the team. Especially this last year. Andy and I, we're kind of looked at among the group as the idea guys. We come up with all of the crazy twists and things, and other people throw stuff in as well, but that's kind of our role in the planning process. Kevin and Bob can build anything you can imagine. So you describe it to them, they make it happen. And so then the team has some pretty well-defined roles, and that's what makes it work well. Kathy Dubar, who's an engineer by trade, she designed your maze challenge and also the ropes challenge, and she's done a couple of challenges particularly over the years. We all kind of show up that day, and we're looking at it with different hats. The challenge builders are hoping that what they put together holds up and doesn't fall apart. So Kevin's looking at his carts and hoping that you guys can get the wheels on right. Andy and I are looking at the challenges more from the strategic point of view, because not only have we laid out the things that you guys saw, but almost every challenge had some other little twist that might have happened that you don't even know about. So we're curious to see, how is this thing actually going to work? So when we show up on the first day, I think it depends on who you're asking. For me, I'm just looking at all you guys. I'm fascinated to watch your expressions on your faces, because we know what we're about to do to you. And most of you are trying to play it really cool and, yeah, I'm ready for this, but I see the little bit of sweat going down your brow, and it's cool for me because I know you're invested in it at that point. So that first day for me, I just kind of stepped back, and that's why you didn't hear from me. I was just kind of watching it all unfold and helping me to get a gauge on how you guys are all going to interact as we were about to load you on those barges.
We plan over the span of a year, and then we show up about a week beforehand and have just this very intensive stretch of, all right, where precisely are we going to put people? What are we going to have the survivors doing? We had ideas, but we had to suddenly implement them in the real world. All of that happens in this very concentrated amount of time, and then you guys show up. And there's not a lot we can do at that point other than just let it run. I mean, there's tons of stuff happening behind the scenes, but it truly is fascinating to see. I mean, you may remember, David, like there was no way I was not going to be in a canoe rowing by you guys on barges, because I wanted to see how you guys were responding to that challenge. What were you doing? What were people saying to one another? How were you guys handling it? Because we envision all different possibilities, and then when we dream team these things, we experience it, but without the stress of I'm actually in the game. I actually at one point I think lobbied Jon, like, Jon, can we turn Dream Team into an actual game so we can feel some pressure? It's like, no, there's too much time, we can't do that. But it's just fascinating to see everything unfold. And again, I'm jumping ahead, but there were certain moments throughout the whole weekend where, one in particular, on merge night, I needed to monitor what was going on in camp, and someone had found a plastic chair somewhere in the woods and had brought it back to camp. And it's like, you can't have chairs. You can't have 2 plastic chairs in the middle of camp. All right, Jordan and I, we're going to take those, and we're going to sit here, and we're going to watch Survivor on television. We're going to watch Merge Night unfold. This is the Merge Night episode, and we're going to sit here and talk about it, not where you can hear us, but and so, you know, once you guys are there, it's just fascinating, all of the different permutations we've envisioned. Only one of them is going to play out, and we're just kind of really interested to see which one. Like Jon alluded to, so many challenges, we have these layers of thinking where, okay, we want them to make choices so that, you know, they can either put themselves out there, or they could fall apart, or they could hide from it. You know, people being leaders, not being leaders. For example, in the barge challenge, you know, someone had the map, and there were people talking on that first night. See that look right there, David?
Okay, next time, laminate the map. If at all possible.
You know,
hey, don't you think we thought about that? You think there's a reason why the map was
laughed, and you laughed when somebody said, no, leave it paper. Leave it paper.
Yeah, I mean, there is some glee that comes from...
a blind person should have held that map for all it was worth.
Yeah, no, it was... you know, but people that night were talking during confessionals about who took the map. When did they lose the map? How good were they with the map? It's just one of those choices people made, and what they did with that choice. Like, people, I mean, before there's even a vote on the horizon yet, people are talking about voting people out based on the fact that they lost the stupid map. And that's just fascinating. And it's the stuff we think about in advance. You know, it's like, why would we ever laminate a map for you? Either take care of it or go home.
Yeah, I'm still waiting for the first Survivor episode that has a laminated map. I haven't seen that happen yet. So until they, not to say that we won't do things they won't, but there's probably a reason for that.
I can only imagine that it's like building a machine, and you know the machine's going to put out the first product, but how the machine gets there, all the turns that it takes, all the surprises, the speed, the pace when it slows down, just all the turns that it takes, and I can only imagine how exciting that is to watch. It's like a child growing up. You birth the child on Thursday afternoon, and well, actually for you guys, you birthed it 4 weeks after the last one they did, and then you see the child come out and be finished when the sole survivor is crowned. You will say something?
In the spirit of giving you some behind-the-scenes stuff too, I wish we could just sit back and watch and let that all unfold. I was telling Andy, I just went back for fun and looked at my phone record from that afternoon. And for you guys, you have an arrival time, and you know what you're supposed to have in a bag, and that's basically it. So multiply that by 18, plus 6 survivors, plus check-in crew and video crew at every station, and Andy and other people are out in the woods doing things to get set up. And in the course of 4 hours, I had 350 text messages or phone calls. Wow. And it was just crazy how many little things we had to check in with each other to make sure that we could just do an opening. So I'm trying to get to a point personally where I can step out of some of that and actually have more time to watch you guys. So I have some clues when I get to Tribal. I know a little bit about personality. But that Thursday afternoon, people are running all over the place. Like when you pull up in your car, it looks nice and serene there at the Crowley.
Oh, yeah.
Forest.
Everybody's so relaxed. And welcome. So glad you're here.
But there's about 30 people running around out in the woods because we can't find somebody, or somebody's in the wrong spot, or they can't find the canoe, or you name it. It's Joel's flight. He missed the same flight you almost missed, and then we got to try to figure it all out. And so, unfortunately for us, there's a lot of little last-minute details that we're trying to get ironed out just so you guys can have an opening.
So was there any one thing for each of you? What was the most worrisome thing for the week? I know there's probably several. You probably had a list. But if there was one thing you were keeping an eye on, keeping track on, do you remember what that would have been? I know there's 24 people you had to get in. I know that's a big problem right there.
Yeah, and it's so many little things that add up to big things. Like while Jon is fielding, some of those phone calls and texts were from me. Like all the survivors, they each had report times. They pretty much all showed up in about a 10-minute window, and so we're like stashing them in various spots in the woods so they don't see one another. And we're trying to check bags and everything, and doing pregame interviews, and at the same time making sure canoes where they need to be. And
canoes, what canoes? I don't know what these canoes you keep mentioning.
Well, that was of course for the survivors, and it said something about when I rode Dr. Jill out to her spot. That was like the first moment I hadn't been running around like a madman in days. And it was very peaceful, and it was a lovely conversation, and I knew immediately that Dr. Jill was there for blood. Like she was in game mode already. But I don't know. For me, just the personal stakes of I backing up a little bit, the having played in year 2 and then being asked to join the production team and help Jon, with the idea side of things, it was very flattering and a ton of fun. I didn't want to wait the 4 weeks before we started talking last year, but the idea of choosing your own tribes. That was something. Obviously, it's kicked around in the Survivor fan base for a while, but I sort of pitched part of that idea and certain pieces of how the game opened, and so I sort of had a lot riding on that personally, just wanting to see it come to fruition and become something interesting, and sort of make you guys think we might be going back to year 1, and then we didn't, and then made you think that we were going into the year 2 mode, and we didn't, and we had a different twist on it, and there were a lot of things that could have gone wrong, and some of them did, frankly. Like someone got released from the spots around the clearing early. Like someone's thought that when the drums started beating that they were supposed to release the people, not wait till the drumming stopped. And so there was one person wandering in the woods by themselves, and you're like, oh God, I can't find them. What are we going to do? And so these are the things, like, I wanted that to play out really, really well. And there were just so many moving parts that, you're just trying to make sure that, in the end, no one gets lost in the woods.
Now, I wasn't really worried about this going into the day on Thursday, but once I got the call that Joel had missed that flight and he was going to be late, we came up with a short-term solution, which was Jimmy T, who stepped in and filled Joel's role in the canoe row part of it. So I was confident that Jimmy T would be able to handle that, but I was a little worried about Joel. Like, how would his tribe receive him? Because they already had this common experience to start, and he wasn't a part of that. He kind of just got dropped in once they got back to their camp. So they'd already been through something. And I was a little worried that might have him targeted or earmarked early on, but obviously, credit to him, he overcame that in a big way, made it all the way to the end.
Yeah. Now I could talk about, obviously, things from my experience of what I saw, which is obviously not everything. You guys only share what you want to share. If it's stuff that never got revealed or came out and you want to use it again, obviously you don't have to share it. But as we were on the barge, and I'll tell you, karma came back to kick me in a big one, because I tell Dwayne all the time that I love the seasons where they start out with, no matter if it's 2 or 3 tribes, but they start out with a full-on tribe challenge, very physical, but all working as one. I love those seasons. They're my favorite starts to any seasons. Not this divide-up basketball game or anything like that, but the whole tribe picking up the cannon, moving it through the mud, getting it to a place, and setting it back. I love those challenges. And sure enough, Season 3 for Durham Warriors starts off with a full group challenge on a barge, minus life jackets, but on a barge where we have to row for almost 3 hours.
That was one of those little details, by the way.
Yeah, we learned about that. But rowing there, and as we're rowing, and Andy's coming by just as relaxed, almost he's feigning like he's ignoring us. Like, yeah, I see you. So you're over there. I know. Whatever. Don't talk to me. I'm just rowing a survivor around. And the folks around me on my barge are calling out, "Oh, it's so-and-so. Oh, it's so-and-so. Oh, it's so-and-so." And I'm like, yeah, I see him. But that's not what I'm concerned about right now, because I was more concerned about finding people I wanted to work with and listening to people and hearing how they spoke and how they reacted to different things and how they were kind of taking the weekend, how they were going to react to the weekend. Were they going to be starstruck? Were they going to be serious about it? And as quiet as I was, I heard the people that were even quieter, and that's what I was looking for. But at the same time, there was that part of me, all of this wanted to play that, but there's that part of me in my arms like, you know what? This is still a challenge, and I want to win the challenge. So do whatever you got to do to win the challenge. But I love the barge challenge. You can see the pictures all over the internet and stuff, but I thought it was fantastic. And like I said at the end, I hope every other season has to do something that's strenuous to start their weekend, instead of just a meet and greet where we all get, ice bottles or water and donuts. We actually got thrown out in the water, first things first. And I could see John smiling as we left. We'll hopefully see you in a few hours. Some of you maybe won't. But I love that. Whose brainchild was the barge?
It was actually Bob's.
Yeah. Oh, bless his heart.
Yeah. We had done the canoes in Season 2 that Andy had done. And we really liked having the pond available to kind of expand what we can do. And Bob came up with that idea. And he was the one that actually built those barges. And we showed up the first day and we looked at those and we're like, geez, those look a little small. And
yeah, have you seen the David guy? Have you seen this guy that's coming out here? He's going to take up half the barge when he gets on there.
One of our 2 or 3 visits in the off season, we took those up to the same place in the pond where you guys started, threw them in the water, and I think we only put 7 of us out there. And it was starting to rock a little bit, and I was like, I think it'll be okay. And so we pulled back into shore, and we left it at that. But yeah, those were Bob's brainchild.
Yeah, and we ultimately dream teamed it and did the whole course just like you guys, because we needed to get a sense of how long it would take. And we had the advantage of being able to use those life jackets, which you guys did not have. We used them as paddles on our arms. But one of the things that we're doing as we're going is trying to play around with different ways that you guys might have tried to do it, so you can get a sense for not only what are people going to do, but like water is sloshing over the sides, and we're trying to anticipate, like, break the challenge to some degree. Like
somebody's holding the paper map.
Yeah, there we go. And so these are the things we think about. Like you have these polls. Do people abandon them? Do people, like, how are you going to spread out 9 people on this thing? How are you going to move around in case people need to switch positions? But like all things, there are layers to it. I mean, again, looking at my notes, some people were already being targeted on Friday or Thursday night because they were sitting in the back of the barge and just kicking their feet. And the thing is, that's what we did on the Dream Team too, thinking like, okay, and we would joke about it because, again, we didn't have the same pressures. Like in the back, I believe it was Paige. Paige Crowley was in the back with somebody, another young lady, and they were kicking their feet. And it's like, yeah, we would target you tonight because we're working our tails off over here. I'm working hard enough that I'm making noises that John's wondering if there's like some wild animal in the shore nearby. And meanwhile, some people are just kicking their feet in the back, and it's like, ugh, we So these are the things that we sort of anticipate and then see as it plays out. Like it wasn't yours. I think it was because you got in first, right, David? Your barge, because the other barge, they stood up the entire time, and we figured out when we dream teamed it that getting onto your knees and paddling and having one or two people up there pushing with sticks ultimately ended up being the most efficient way, but your boat was full of people who were willing to try things. Everyone was worried about standing out or giving out orders, and so they didn't. They sort of stumbled in that challenge because no one wanted to take the lead, and that's always fascinating.
Well, I forgot to ask before you answer that, John, or comment. How did the two groups get divided? Was that random, or how was that divided?
No, not random at all. Once we had the cast, we went through and we're trying to, again, kind of the same thing we talked about in casting. We want to try to create two relatively equal barges. Since there's 9 men and 9 women, obviously we can't keep it equal male-female. So we try to put more physical people on both barges and try to make sure if there were any potential connections between people pre-game that they were on separate rafts from the very beginning. So we probably spent as much time looking through that initial setup as we did some of the other plans, just to make sure, to the best that we could, that we created two equal opening experiences.
Yeah. Because as soon as you called those 9, of course, I've already started thinking. As soon as our blindfolds came off, I started looking. And I saw Matt, I saw Bob, I saw a few others. And you called up those 9, and it was only 4 guys and 5 girls. But it was Chris P., it was Benji or Jared, Carl, and Jeff. And I'm like, okay, there's some meatheads right there. That's a pretty strong team if we get into a tug of war. I started looking around, I saw Matt, and then I saw Mike, who turned out to be a cross trainer, but he's still a slim guy, and then I saw Chris, who's also slim, Chris Lord, and then me and Bob. So I'm thinking, okay, so my weight equals all these people. And then we got those 4 big guys over there, and then we got put on the barges, and to me, like Andy was saying, that worked against them because we had all of our people up front got down. Bob started up front but ended up going to the back just to try and push. Bob never talked, but he never stopped working, which got him points to some degree. But, I think it worked in our favor because you're right. They seem to have stood up almost the whole ride there.
Yeah, and like Andy said, that anything you guys went through, we did the same thing. So we got on those barges and paddled the whole way. So we knew that just because you look big and physical, that didn't necessarily give you an advantage.
Yeah.
So when we're thinking what does fair look like, it's not just based on your physical build, but we're thinking who's going to be creative in trying to come up with a solution here. And these are all the kind of things we're trying to glean from people's responses. Have they given me a reason to believe they're going to be leaders or innovators, or how are they going to play a role with these 8 new friends on a barge that they just met 30 seconds ago?
Yeah. It was a great start because when we came into our reward, the nice little reward that it was, I was looking for pizza, but it obviously wasn't pizza. But then the second barge comes up, and instead of separating us, because that's what the barge conversation mostly was, do you guys think we're a tribe? Do you think we've been separated? And I'm like, my initial thought was no, because it seems so random, and I know Andy is such an organic person that he likes things to happen naturally and let the game play itself. But I thought, no, that was on purpose. It could have been a weight distribution. It could have been an age distribution. It could have been anything. I didn't think we were in tribes yet, which is why I wanted to socialize with everybody that was there. I kind of got a grasp of the people I was with on the barge, but I wanted to work with the others. But I loved how we were put into one space for a short amount of time. And sure enough, people wanted to start walking, wanted to start looking. Here comes Mr. Baker. No. Stay in one place. You're not allowed to wander, which was kind of neat. It forced 18 people to be together. And then we got this long hike where we could have swore our guide was lost, but we ended up getting where I think we were supposed to get. But it was a long, great hike, which was another opportunity for us to talk to each other, get to know different people. And even when I made a close friendship, I said, we need to separate because I need to work the back of the group that I haven't met yet, and you need to work to the front, and vice versa. So two great starts with this barge race and with the socializing, and then the walk, which wasn't a march. It was an opportunity to socialize. Did y'all think it would work that way?
Yeah, no, we sort of talked through all the various pieces and sort of how people might respond to it. And so we wanted people to, I mean, we knew, invariably we talk at it from 5 different directions when we're on the production call and thinking, okay, smart people are going to figure out that they're not on the same tribe. When they're on the boats, and Jon is going to choose language very specifically to never use the word tribe, and then but the boats are colored. We debated that quickly. It's like, do we slap some color on there so that some people might make the assumption, and then we had some polls when you got to Stump Corral that had those colors on it to maybe reinforce it for some people, just to keep people on their toes. Wondering, but again, savvy people are going to think, okay, it's a 5-4 split. This can't be, the gender thing. They're going to want it balanced. But hearing those conversations, it impacted how people were talking to one another on the hike, and it was fascinating to be walking with you guys and seeing who would drift back, who would move forward, what were you guys talking about, and what sort of speculation was already being thrown around. And then, again, when you got into Stump Corral. It was everything was thought through in that sense of what are they going to be assuming right now, and how can we play with that assumption?
How can we torture them just a little bit more?
Well, there is a certain glee that comes with that, but it's also, there are times where it's like, let the savvy people be right. There's some reward for having thought it through. But you also put a target on your back if you seem like you know too much, you watched the videos and did all of your homework. It was fascinating to see, again, as especially in the first and second day, how that affected relationships. Superfans coming together, but then when they're talking confessionals, being worried about one another because they know so much. And so everything we've designed, especially for the opening, because it sets so much of the tone, is to give people those options. Are they going to put themselves out there? Are they going to figure out what's going on? What assumptions are they making? And where are those assumptions going to lead them awry? It's fun, frankly.
A little fun behind the scenes story before we move away from the barges and the canoes. There were 2 separate experiences at the opening, one for the 6 survivors and one for the 18 contestants, and they weren't supposed to overlap. We had hoped to have the survivors finished with their experience maybe 30 minutes before the first barge pulled up. But because of delays and Jamie wandering around in the woods by himself, which is a whole nother story, but we had to bring out your reward because you guys were getting close to the end. Well, in the meantime, the 5 of the 6 survivors came up to the same end point and stumbled across all this food sitting there. And being the savvy survivors that they are, they decided to help themselves. So when you guys got there, there was a little less reward that you can thank them for at some point. But these are the things you can't plan them, but they're kind of fun when they happen.
I would expect nothing less from those people, especially Dr. Jill, because she confessed to that. And she and I did a podcast talking about her experience. And she confessed that, yeah, y'all's reward was a little bit bigger, except that we got there first and took some of your items. But that's part of the game. You do it until they tell you don't. So whatever you can get away with until they tell you not to. And see, what I liked about the pond and the canoes and the walk was it wasn't necessarily on the video. You could see the canoes of last season pull up. You couldn't see where necessarily they went, but pulling up to that spot, which was not Stump Corral, was offsetting because it wasn't recognizable. That wasn't on the video. This isn't part of the video. Where are we going? Where are they starting us at? So that's what was neat, is that even if you think you know the game, you don't know the game because you don't know where it's going to go. So another tip a cap to you guys for putting us out of our element and then making us walk and giving us the opportunity, but at the same time we're all wondering, what are we going to come up to? Are we going to come up to the circle? Are we going to come up to something else? Where are we going to come to? So, and then we come up not only to Stump Corral, but several dozen, even more people standing up there watching us walk in like a bunch of cattle being led to slaughter. So that was awesome, though, to have that many people standing up there watching. That was really cool. That was my thought on it.
Yeah, well, and Jon can speak more to this, I'm sure. But that first night, Thursday night, is that's gives you a glimpse of how big the volunteer crew is, because they've all been so incredibly instrumental in greeting you guys at your cars and getting you into the places you need to be. And this is the culmination of it all. When you guys come into Stump Corral, that's who you see. The rest of the days, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, they're a part of the audience, but then there's an audience. And David, you and I have talked about this a little bit, but it just adds this dimension to it. I've talked to Kevin Thurber about it a little bit, our challenge god. He played in year one, and they didn't have an audience in year one. It'd be kind of eerie in that space to do it. I mean, the crowd just becomes such a part of it. You feel like people are on your side, they're interested, they're invested, they're entertained. Seeing you guys come into Stump Corral, it's like, all right, we're getting this thing underway. And seeing the look on your guys' faces, because, again, we have all the information. You guys have very little. And seeing you guys, like, again, the people who think, okay, now we're going to figure out what kind of tribes we're in, or, oh, this is the same place. If you saw the video, like, this is where season 2, they spent the night here in this corral without having tribes. And people started whispering and talking, and you start seeing who people are trusting. But the audience is a legitimate part of the game, sometimes in ways that we would prefer them not to be. I mean, that's another production story of people shouting things out during one of the challenges that help people in a challenge. And but the audience, it's fantastic having that many people there cheering you on.
Yeah, it is. I already know some people that want to come this year, friends of mine that want to come just to meet the survivors and watch the game for 2 to 3 days. They just want that experience. They said, so people really watched? I'm like, the hills were full of people. It was a lot of family members, but it was a lot of friends, and it was a lot of local people. It was just amazing. But the neat thing is you don't walk up to a stranger. When you walk up to somebody, you just say hi, introduce yourself, and you're friends. That's the. I don't know if that's the Crowley community or if that's just the hill itself, but it's just the most welcoming place to be. Especially if you're a Survivor fan, because everybody knows why everybody else is there.
Part of what's going on too, David, you probably saw after you got voted out, we had the little boards.
We're not going to talk about that part, by the way.
Yeah, sorry about that. The boards up on the hillside with everybody's pictures.
Yep.
So I was walking around during the breaks, and the people would walk over to the board, and they were like, oh, that was this guy, and they'd be pointing out things, and they feel like they know you in the same way they know the people on the real show. So by the time they get to meet you, there's already a common basis for interaction there. This is the guy, and there he is, and now I'm going to go talk to him. So it's kind of neat how that all plays out.
There's a couple folks that introduced themselves to me and said me by name, and I just had no, am I supposed to know that person? Or who am I talking to? And some voices I recognize because you hear them during the challenges, but at the same time, it was really neat to meet the spouses of my tribe. I mean, that was so cool. And then I ended up sitting with several of them for the rest of the game. So that was really neat.
Yeah, well, and you end up having these interesting experiences, like you, David, like when you leave the game and, people start coming up to you and talking to you about it, but then they just start asking you questions like what was going on back at camp and why did you do this and whatnot, and like people, it's like they can reach through the television and talk to the characters, and it's fascinating to see how invested people become, so much so, Jon reminded me of this, I had totally spaced on it, but people become so invested. Like Matt became such a crowd favorite that when he was blindsided just before the merge, Dr. Jill still talks about it, that they got booed.
Yep.
I mean, the audience was so into it, like, how could you do that? But that's how it goes.
Well, yeah, with Jon's villainous way of reading the ballots, when I got voted out, when he read Matt's first, that's when the Boo Birds first made their claim. They were not going to let Matt get voted out so quick. By this time I'd already kind of caught on to what was going on, so I wasn't surprised at the next name that came up. But it was like, oh, what if I'm not telling anybody that I voted Matt? I said, I hope not all of them voted for me, and sure enough, Matt voted the other way too. So there was a little twist in there, but otherwise, that was kind of neat. It's something that you'll never see in the CBS version, but it's not a home field advantage. It's just a live studio audience right there watching the whole weekend, which is what. And you couldn't tell who was related to who except for the signs. If you looked up and said my mom's the best soul survivor, then you could tell who that person was. Otherwise, everybody was cheering for everybody. No matter which tribe won, people cheered. And those that came in last, that people still cheered. So it's not a root for them instead of them. It's everybody does well, that's good, but we're still going to have our favorites, and we're still going to cheer for those and not cheer for others.
Yeah, I will say this, and I don't mean to dive too deeply into my own season, but my family was there on Friday. They had no idea sort of how involved this was going to be, and they had plans on the weekend, and so they left. And walking out there on Saturday and not having my family there and not having any connection, because one of the things that we care very much about in production is they can cheer all they want, but we need the fourth wall to stay up. We don't want you guys to feel like you could go and interact with the audience, that this is a game that you're playing and you can't get any help from anybody or any information from anybody. And so not having my family there, and then when we started blindsiding people, like I was doing things that bad things. I was being mean to people, and just feeling like I became the villain of the piece, at least early on, and feeling that from the audience was a really palpable thing. Like people, you could sense like they were feeding off of this and realizing what's going on and putting some of the pieces together, and so it becomes a very they're participatory. Again, we try to sort of limit how much, but it is. Truly a fascinating piece of it, and anyone who is in the area who wants to come and watch, come and watch. If you come on Friday, I virtually guarantee you're going to stay through till Sunday, because you're going to want to see how it plays out.
Yeah, yep. The audience has really become an interesting evolution in the whole process. It's certainly something we didn't think of. Like Andy said, year one there wasn't any. There was a couple people hanging around. Year two, we decided to be intentional about it. Last year, there was food sponsors, and you know what I mean? There was a whole-blown event. There was a meet and greet Friday night with other survivors who were there, like Ethan Zahn, who had come just to be part of that Friday night experience and watch the event a little bit. And now, as we're planning challenges, the audience is part of what we're thinking about. And like you said, David, this isn't something that CBS has to worry about, but we're worried, well, can the audience hear what's being said? Do they have the right sight line? Where should we do this challenge so that the audience can get an impact of it? So it's another element that adds time, but it's certainly worth it because it adds a really fun dimension to Durham Warriors that you don't even get with Survivor.
Yeah, it's funny because you mentioned the meet and greet, and there were folks that knew about that and were talking about that, and there were many of us that weren't for the reason that we didn't want people to know what we knew or how much we'd looked up or how much we'd studied. I didn't want anybody to know I was a podcaster. I didn't want anybody to know that I was that I'd put my toes into the Survivor community, that I'd talk to anybody whatsoever. There was one person that recognized me, but otherwise, which made us an immediate alliance. I had to protect her to some degree, or else get rid of her quick. But and it never came to any fruition because she got put on a different tribe. But the Friday night was really good because it's like you dumped on us a thing of rice, opportunity to make fire, and then y'all were gone. And I guess that was Thursday night. I take that back. That was Thursday night. But then we had to go into tribes, and when you came back to us Thursday night, and you told us we were going to try and break our necks in the woods, that was kind of neat because we still hadn't had fire at the time, and you pulled us off in these different directions. And what I loved about it was an opportunity. I wasn't sure what was going to happen, but something was going to happen to either get me a chance to talk to other people, get me a chance to talk to somebody privately, because it was really hard to get a private conversation Thursday night. It was too obvious, because if you talk to one person too long, you've already been seen together, you're linked up, and that's a problem. Could be a problem for you, so you got to build. But then Thursday night, you took us out in the woods, and I still don't even know where we were, prospectively. I think I remember seeing a shack. So now that I think about it, I remember that was the shack that took you to the challenge area. But that was really cool because I love the way, to me, that's the organic way of tribes forming. it was so random and so set out that it was a matter of who got back to the fire first. And what's funny was I had already picked out the people I wanted to work with. Apparently, Wendy and I had a bond that I didn't know about, and that's that we're both from Virginia, and that was it. Never talked, never met each other, but once I found out there was a Virginia person, I wanted to meet her. I knew there'd be some sort of connection there that we could either trust each other or get to know each other. Turns out we were the same age. We both had kids, both happily married, and it was going to be a bond there. But we didn't get a chance to talk much after that. But once we went out into the drum beat, and once Lou got tired and finally stopped drumming, then we were able to run, and I was looking for certain people. But I knew that I could not find a path to get down the hill. And I knew that it was either going to be a broken ankle, a twisted knee, or I was going to be bleeding by the time I got down there, and I would have to use the fire to cauterize whatever part of my body was bleeding. But it worked out that Lisa came bowling by me, one of what I call the alpha females, who I'd love to see play in the real game. But Lisa came by me. I just said, well, if I don't make the first group, I'm going to be in her group. And I got behind her and followed her path, got down there, and as it turned out, I got with three of the people I wanted to work with. It was amazing how that turned out. I was lucky. I was the last guy to get there for the first tribe, so we got the reward. But that was an incredible way of dividing the tribes. That was very unique. It was still the first night, and we were still doing this next challenge. We had what I call two big challenges in the first night, and that was just awesome.
Yeah, I don't know if you figured it out or not, but we had the 18 of you in a circle around a center fire, and if you were to be able to see the person to your left or your right, which you probably couldn't, the person on either side of you was not on your raft. So whatever bond you would have made with them on the raft would have been irrelevant, at least for that first impression as you worked your way towards the fire. So, we created 3 separate experiences for you on that first night. There was the raft, there was that hour or so around the fire where we didn't really tell you what was going on, and then there was the chaotic moment that you just described. And we didn't know how it was going to play out, but we wanted to give you all of these different sensory inputs and now let's see what they do with them. And so it turns out that almost all the tribes were formed based on where you started out in that circle. And that's, all the follow-up questions I was asking you, David, via email, like how did you end up on your tribe? That's kind of Andy and I doing some backfill research. So when we create the experience for these folks next year, whatever it may be, we're trying to figure out how are you guys thinking about all of this. So this is part of our process of learning to put this all into play again for 2016.
Yeah, and that's part of the thinking that went into choose your own tribe. A lot of it ended up playing out in that, yes, it was proximity, but in talking to some of the players, a couple of players did, at some of those dividing junctures, get rejected. And other people pulled in, and we wanted those choices being made. That was some of the thinking going into it was, let's get people, they have a certain amount of time to pull together their tribe, so there's time pressure, but within that time pressure, they're going to make some immediate choices. And are they going to regret them? Are they going to be happy with them? It seemed like everyone ultimately was happy with their tribes, but at least one person got rejected, and other people didn't end up being able to find the people that they were looking for and just went with who was close because of the sense of urgency. But those are the kinds of choices that fascinate the production team, because that's the case on the real show. You want to put people in a position, they can't ride on rails. You have to make choices and then live with them. And that goes from challenges. What position are you going to be in the domino challenge? You're going to put yourself out there. Are you going to be the stacker? Are you going to be holding which piece of it are you going to hold up? And those choices that you make, you can be the hero, or you can be the zero, right?
Yeah, I did. When I finally took my blindfold off and read the note, I heard ruffling right away. And I looked up and I saw a female figure, but I wasn't sure if that was the handler or the person. So I don't know who was to my left, but I presume Lisa was to my right as she came, like I said, barreling and burning a path for both of us down the hill, because she was braver than I was to go down a completely dark hill without knowing what you're going to run into. So the braking and stuff, fortunately, wasn't my bones. It was her and the sticks that she was trampling over. But it was, you're right, it was chaotic, but at the same time it was quick. and it happened so fast. But I loved, for me as a fan, somebody that loves the sudden stress that you put under to play Survivor, I love that you had to run. You had to find, and you didn't know what you were going to find when you got there. That was the kind of neat thing. It's like a Christmas present that you have no clue about, but at the same time, there were certain Christmas presents that I really, really wanted, and I wanted to open those first and have those first, but it was still an amazing experience. You know, it was 1% amazing, 99% stressful as to where I was going to end up and where I was going to go.
Well, and if you think about it, the reward when you got to the center was what, David?
The reward was actually not a reward, but it was a tent when you got there. And I'll tell you about that in a second.
Okay, well, I was just going to ask you the question. So you get this tent. What do you think our thinking was?
Well, the tent was good in the sense that it obviously protected you from the elements, if there were elements. But once we spent 5 minutes in the tent and made our little talk and pact, you know, I kind of said, hey, guys, there's 12 people out there talking without us, and we're in here talking without them. So we are now 18 through 13 to be voted out if we're all one giant tribe. So we need to, at different points, go out and use the restroom, go out and play with the fire, but we need to get out of this tent. We've met, we've greeted, we've talked, now we need to get out, because otherwise we've just separated ourselves from the rest of the group.
And that is exactly the conversation we wanted you to have. And just to give you a glimpse into the minds of the production team, would it shock you to find out that we were actually hoping for a little bit of rain?
No,
just to test your resolve. Do you stay outside and talk with people? Do you try to squeeze more people into the tent? Who do you squeeze in there? Who gets to be in there and who doesn't? And those choices that you have to make. I mean, you made some of them anyway, but a little bit of rain wouldn't have hurt. Would have been fascinating.
Well, Bob took mercy on us and said, I'm going to break rock when I snore, so I'm going to stay outside. I'm not going to go inside with you guys. You guys have it. And this was Bob's, though. This was Bob the benevolent, because he just wanted to work. He just wanted to keep the fire going. He wanted to do well in challenges. He wasn't worried about hurting people's feelings. He wasn't worried about his feelings being hurt. This is just the way Bob seemed to be. And so the 5 of us went inside and had our talks and had our private talks, and as it worked out, we got outside. For the most of the rest of the night, once people started falling asleep, we kind of wandered back in towards the tent, and I think finished in there, and I think I slept twice for about 10 or 15 minutes, but I really didn't sleep that night, which was also exciting. But we'd make our different walks out, and through different points of the night and the morning, we started forming our pack of 2, and then our pack of 3, and then our pack of 4. But what the neat part was, as small as Stump Corral is, there's still plenty of room to make those alliances. There's still plenty of opportunities. There's a porta potty. Thank you for that. There's a water jug. You know, a lot of things can be talked about at the water jug when there's only 2 people. You know, there's different things that can go on, and it's so much fun how much of the game was played Thursday night until Friday morning. It fascinates me, and I know the other 17, how much got done, how much got thought about. That's why I can't wait to hear the rest of the confessionals, to see what I did wrong. You know, if I was singled out for something, or if somebody saw me in a different light, I would really be interested in that, because I made alliances quick, but at the same time, I know there was a lot of other conversations going on.
Yeah, no, it's you know how in Worlds Apart, they showed raw footage of Dan Foley.
Very raw footage.
There's so much raw footage, and watching all of the confessionals, seeing what everyone was saying, and yeah, I mean everyone pings on different people's radars and what they're talking about, because it just reinforces the lesson that everything is double-edged. In your case, people were talking about how, David is, he was quiet at first, but now people, now he's talking to people, and he's a really nice guy, but now I'm worried about him. And it's just, these things that come out once people have some time to, once you guys have settled in and you guys have your tribes and we start doing some confessionals and sort of seeing where everyone's heads are at, it's that first, you have some quiet time when you were in Stump Corral, but it wasn't quiet in the sense that everybody was around that fire and no one wanted to wander off, because and again it's pleasing to the production team because we just see how invested people already are in the game, and you've only been there for a few hours at that point. It feels like forever, but it's only been a handful of hours, and you got some days ahead of you.
What's neat about sitting around the fire was it reminded me of a movie a while back called The 13th Warrior, where Antonio Banderas joined this crew of men going to fight this fire giant, and he didn't speak their language. But as he sat around the fire with them over a course of nights on their travels, he just listened and gradually picked up their language. And that's kind of what you do sitting around with 17 other people sitting around a fire. You see people's shoes get burned. You laughed about that. You see people like Bob who's sitting just outside the circle, not really talking to anybody. And then you see other people that kind of dominate the conversation. So you're kind of picking up who you can talk to, who you think's going to listen to you, and how you approach certain people. That's what I got out of the fire. But I thought the campfire was awesome. It was the perfect first way of meet and greet. It was a great way. You had a chance to talk to everybody if you wanted to, or you had a chance to not talk to everybody. But it was just a great start. After the two challenges like that, it was a great start.
And that's a lot of what we're trying to do. You just described it perfectly. We're trying to create situations where there's lots of opportunities. If you want to take the Bob route and sit just on the edge, you can do that. If you want to be the social butterfly and go talk to all 17 others, you can do that too. And it all depends on what your view is, your personality, what your strategy, how you think people perceive you. And all we are trying to do is create the scenario where all this can take place, and then watch it all unfold. Because there's no way, as we said earlier, with a lot of this stuff, there's no way to predict how it's going to turn out. So we just try to create as many opportunities for you guys to have those experiences and let you sort it out. Like Prope said, it's your game. So that's what we're trying to have happen for you.
Yeah, and that, it can't stress that enough, that there is something, when you go to the production side of things, you realize you have to just, at certain points, let go. When we would do confessionals, but when we would finish with a tribe, it's like, okay, we're not going to see you guys until tomorrow. So much game is going to happen when you guys are back at camp doing your own thing, and that's what it was for me in my season, where so much work got done around the fire at 4 o'clock in the morning. And it's just, we create the opportunities, and then we back off and let things unfold.
If we take every minute, we're going to be here until Monday talking about it. But anyway, I didn't want to hold you that long. But leading into Friday morning, I got to give Jared, who tried to go by Benji, but Jared some credit. If others may have said it, I didn't hear it, but Jared said, Dave, what do you think is going to happen tomorrow morning? And I love this kind of talk because it's what I would do. I don't mind sharing my opinion, but I want to hear somebody else's opinion too. And he thought, they're probably going to bring. Have you seen the old videos? They're probably going to bring survivors. And I said, I've seen them like once. Seen each one maybe once or so. I tried to watch a few. I don't think I saw all of them, which was a lie. But it was the persona I wanted to give off. But he said, do you think they're going to do 3 for 3 tribes? Because we're in our 3 tribes now. And I said, I don't know. He goes, what if it's 6? What if they're their own tribe? I said, wow, that would be really big. And I'm like, what would you do, or where would you think from there? So I tried, and I told Heather and Chris, who I was trying to work with, and Wendy, talk to as many of these other folks as you can, because at some point we're going to be neighbors, or we're going to be housemates. We're going to be something. And we did, but I talked to Jared, I talked to Chris, I talked to Kristen, talked to a few different people. But so I give him props, because Friday morning we come out there, and we're standing back in our tribes, and Jared's at the back of his tribe, his green tribe, and I'm just kind of standing at the back of Tawadi tribe and just looking. And I know John's talking, but I'm not quite hearing everything he's saying, because I'm kind of looking, and I'm looking around, I'm seeing what's open, and I see the 3 strings, and then and Jared just kind of goes, Dave, and he calls across and he nods over, and we see the 4th string. I said, oh, curse those people, And I'm like, yeah, all right, well, and then John teases us with, well, you know what we're missing? We're missing survivors. So he calls them out, the first 3. I'm like, yeah, keep going. I look at Jared, and Jared's just kind of smirking, and here comes number 4, and here comes number 5. I said, nah, well, we're in trouble. So, and sure enough, he goes, now pull out, I guess they had their own little bags of their shirts, and he said, pull out your new tribe colors. So how did that work out as you thought it would? Is that something you consider again down the road, or how did that work out? The 4 tribes.
Well, I mean, again, production sort of talked this one through pretty extensively, and Jon can, I'm sure, speak to, it becomes logistically, it's more challenging to, get 6 survivors to come and play and coordinating all of that. But we talked through, again, keeping you guys on your toes. People like Jared, and Jared's an interesting case in that, if you ever want more proof that even in the DWSC that returning players have advantages, they just have a clarity of thinking. Like, he was paying attention to things like the number of strings. He was finding clues because he figured out from year 2, like, what common elements are there here? How can I? And he found idle clues because he had some perspective. But we had planned for the survivors to come out 2 by 2, man and woman, man and woman, man and woman, and stand in front of each of the tribes. And some people, it was very clear on their faces that they thought, because the word hadn't spread among everybody that there was going to be 4 tribes, it looked like there were going to be 3 tribes of 8 with a man and a woman survivor on each one. And then the twist. And it may not have worked for everybody, but it certainly worked enough. And I know that the survivors, too, were on their toes because they talked about, wouldn't it be great if we were a tribe? Because they had a great first night. They were in the woods bonding, too. But they thought, well, they're never going to let that happen. This is a fan thing. It's a charity thing. They're going to split us up among everybody. So they were a bit on the surprise side, maybe a little more than you guys were. Like, they didn't think that this could never happen. There's
a great couple of photos that I just saw putting together the storyline. You'll see them next week, and it's from this very scene where Jamie's got his yellow shirt on, and he's spinning it around over his head. And somebody in the background, it might be Matt or maybe Mike, is sitting there like this. And they just have this look on their face like, I can't believe this is happening. It's this clear look of exasperation, like, I'm going to have to play against them. And you can see, I think it's Brooke and Joel are ready to embrace, like, they have this elated look on their face, like, I can't believe this is going to be 6 survivors on a tribe. So, like you said, hats off to Jared for figuring that out. But I think if you and he knew it, the other 16 probably didn't. And the survivors certainly didn't. So for me, that's a win. Now I know to think about 4 strings ahead of time for next year. I still think it worked out great.
Oh, I think it worked out really great. For the overall Saturday, what was so great about it was, even though they dominated challenges, I think there was 8, and I think they won 6 because we won 1, and I think Maz won 1. It didn't matter because when the division came that night, all the rewards were divided to some degree, and that's what was so neat about how the game progressed. It wasn't lopsided. The scores may have been lopsided for Friday, but at the end of Friday night, the lopsidedness went away because of the division that was supposed to happen. That was going to happen. So, and that was really cool. But at the same time, for those wanting to play, as you play all these challenges on Friday for this particular season, there was no tribal councils on Friday. So between each challenge, they were all reward challenges. You got points and you got rewards depending on where you finished. But between each challenge, you were taken away to a lockdown area where you could talk amongst yourselves. Your handlers were there to say yes or no, but they couldn't tell you anything. Obviously, they couldn't even show you their watches. Most of them didn't have watches. They wouldn't let you use their phones. But anyway. But it was neat because the only thing we could really ask was how much time do we have, between challenges. Jon said y'all have 40 minutes. Okay, we got 40 minutes. We're going to start a fire. We're going to cook something. We're going to eat something. Or Jon said you had 15 minutes. All right, refill your water. Let's get a drink, and then let's get ready for the next challenge. So it was still, and as the day went along, it was so great that you guys lulled us into a complacency of being a tribe. That by the end of the night, there was one challenge, the sandbag challenge, the evil of challenges with these sandbags, and it got to a point, and I've told this story before, but when we were playing for 3rd place against the Green Tribe, right before Jeff dislocated his arm or his shoulder, whatever it was, it was a stop in the game. That might have been the time when we stopped, and I told the guy I was already out, and I told the guys, look, we've got so much stuff, we're going to party tonight. We've got so much food. We got fire. We got pots. We got a tent. We are good to go. Don't worry about finishing 3rd. If you're done, you're done. Let them have this point. I'm not worried about winning this. You guys don't need to worry about winning this. We've got everything we need to have a good night. And everybody just kind of smiled and nodded, and they were good with that. We ended up winning because Green defaulted. But we were so ecstatic about the end of the day that we wanted to leave. We didn't even want you to talk anymore. We just wanted you to send us on our way. But there was this part of me, this 33% part that said, there's no way they're sending us out to 4 camps. I know that we were in different camp. We were in one camp last night. They're not going to create 4 different camps for us. And just about the time I wanted to start talking to people about this, talking to Heather and talking to Chris and Wendy, and then we go into the final challenge, and then we get all mumble-jumbled. So that was just good because it was a great way to lull us into complacency, but at the same time stir the game again. So if you come play this game, there are 4 days. Be expected of at least 4 twists that could happen to your game at any time, and there could be probably more. You never know. So how were y'all thinking the swap on Friday night was going to work? Obviously, I don't think you thought it was going to work the way it did.
No. Yeah, that in our wildest dreams, we never expected that to happen. And there were pros and cons of it. Quite honestly, if I were to have it all to do over again, I wish it wouldn't have played out that way, but that's just my personal opinion. That's what gets back to what Andy said. At some point, we lay it out, and we create the options, and whatever happens, happens, and we have to be okay with it and go with it. And that's kind of the way, after we all sat down Friday night, we said, that's kind of, we kind of felt bad for the third tribe, and they're going to get decimated. And there's a little bit of human emotion came into it. But, after we look back on it, it was what it was. And there's not much, we could have changed the rules to not allow that to happen. And we've thought about that. If we ever do something like that again, can we stop that from happening? But, it's one of those things that you couldn't have anticipated it going in. And even if Chris and Joel or Chris and Brooke decided that they want to do it, I was kind of surprised that everybody else went along with it. And I kept asking people that I've talked to, why did you agree to that? If Chris P. was telling me, hey, why don't you put Troy back on that team with the other survivors, I would have been, what, are you crazy? But I guess, in that moment, people didn't want to rock the boat. And so that was the most surprising thing about it, is that it was able to get as much momentum as it did from an idea that germinated between 1 or 2 people.
Yeah, well, how did Colton get 8 guys to go with him to Tribal Council after winning the challenge?
Good point. Yeah, same group thing.
Yeah, and I remember, again, talking about audience. The audience and production crew were all looking at one another like, how's this happening right now, and what's the thinking that's going into it? And as with all things Survivor, you just have to adapt to how things played out, and people paying the price for whatever choices they ended up making. We were a little sad because it is, a charity event. We want people to be able to, spend some time with the survivors, that there was a tribe who ended up not having any. But kudos to Dan Foley and Jimmy T, who were hanging around the event for the weekend. They made visits to all of the camps, and they went out of their way to spend some extra time with the Green Tribe because they didn't have any survivors there to hang out with them. Wanted to, give them some time to just hang out and talk shop and talk about their seasons and whatnot, which was really nice of them to do, because obviously people who are there to experience the event, one of the things they want to do are get to know some of the survivors.
And if you haven't seen it or are not sure what we're talking about, it turned into a reverse schoolyard pick, where if Andy and I and Jon were captains, I would pick somebody to go on one of their tribes, and then Andy would pick somebody to go on Jon or my tribe, and Jon would pick somebody to go on Andy or my tribe. So it was like a reverse schoolyard pick. And to be honest, even though it didn't work in my favor, the concept was good because I don't know who expected that. I don't know if anybody saw that coming, and that's what made it good to me, because I love twists that you don't see coming. But at the same time, it gave somebody like Chris a chance to be savvy, to make a play and make an effort.
Yeah, and to give him all the credit in the world, that was Jon's idea to reverse swap it, because we started talking about a swap as a production team, because obviously Survivor does it, and a straight-ahead swap you could do that, and you have people making choices and revealing alliances and whatnot. But the reverse swap made it really interesting. Like, how are you going to set up these teams? And I mean, the thinking, again, one could parse it all day. The theory of setting up a team to be physically weaker than the other two is all well and good if the only one team is going to have to vote somebody out. But
right.
Two teams were going to be voting people out. If you had watched the previous season, that's the precedent anyway, that there's a lot of bodies that have to get voted out. So it was a bit short-sighted to create one monster team full of survivors. But that said, one of the things that for me, and I had it in season 2 with Bezo, you'll always have that full Friday, right? That you bonded with that group of people on Friday, and I just remember thinking on Friday night and actually talking about it, and I don't know why, it was kind of dumb for me to talk about it, but I was saying we had such a great day today. It's a shame that tomorrow it's all going to change. But people do have that full day of that experience of competing and being called on physically and mentally and emotionally. Like you said, going back, you have 40 minutes in between challenges. What do you do with that time? Do you rest? If you're resting, are people going to assume that you feel too safe? Are you making alliances? What are you doing with that time? And so, that Friday is just packed with all of that sort of quiet drama, where Saturday and Sunday things unfold, where the drama is very in your face and overt, and again that's the thinking.
There's also a little subtleness going on there, David, in that the other thing was you assigned the person to the other tribe, but they got to bring one of the items with them, one of the reward items that you talked about earlier. So you're watching your tribe get built, and obviously your first consideration is this person trustworthy? Are they good in challenges? But at some point in time, I have to think about, do I have a flint? So you're looking over, and that tribe over there, I'd like to send person A on to Andy's tribe, but there's a flint over there. And if he takes that flint and goes, am I going to get one? So there's just one more thing to kind of throw in the mix there. And again, we're never really sure how that's going to impact somebody's choice, but it's just one more thing to think about in a situation like you said, that you probably, not only did you never think about it, you've never done this. You've never done reverse schoolyard pick, So you're trying to think, how do I do this? And then you're thinking about, at the same time, do I have a pot? Do I have a flint? And it's just a whole lot of stuff to take in all at once. Well, somebody's saying, okay, it's your turn. Make a pick. You got 10 seconds. Let's go.
Yeah. It's really cool because a million different things could have happened. I could have been holding the flag instead of Chris Lord. I could have walked up and made the first pick for the blue tribe. So many different things could have happened. It really is almost where you're standing, and what you're standing next to. And it was so funny talking to Joel right after the event that he said when I think it was Chris's tribe picked Wendy to go to his tribe, and he said, is that a tent? Is that little lady standing in front of a tent? Bring the tent. Grab the tent. Bring the tent. He's like, we got a tent. Do you believe we got a tent? So it was like you said, when you pick somebody from the tribe, then you look at their spoils, and then you take it from them. But it's so funny, Andy, the way you described it. It's like you're laying the landmines on Friday. You're laying them out in specific places because Saturday they just all went off. About every 45 minutes, a landmine was going off. And it was funny because I was talking to Kristen the other day. I said, talking about Chris and his plan, I said, do you not think Chris thought about 2 tribal councils after every challenge? She goes, probably, but it's a matter of you kind of think you're in a good spot. You think you've got the alliances. You think you've got control of the tribe. It was easy. They had 2 survivors. They're going to vote them off first. Those are the first 2 survivors. Maybe they win a challenge, and as it turned, it worked against them. But still, it wasn't in my favor, but it was still a great twist. And, no matter how it worked, a million different things could have happened. Us that got voted out could have played things different ways. I've already had my nightmares. I've already had my therapy session with Troy Zan about what I could have, should have, would have done. Even Jill has therapeutically told me what I should have done and what I should have said. So it's still wonderful. And like I said, it's fun to talk to them outside the game because they smile and they laugh. Oh, if you'd only done this, or if you'd have said this, but it's part of the game.
Yeah.
That's why they want to play again.
Well, and everybody has the woulda, coulda, shoulda, right? I mean, you mentioned Troyzan. I remember doing the exit interview with him, and that he got taken out before he felt like it was his time because he was supposed to be in the Final Four. And I told him after he got voted out, I'm like, we got to wrap up this interview quickly. No, I mean, we'll talk and say everything we want to say, but you really need to see the Final Four challenge because you would have won.
Yep.
And he was like, what? And he ran up the hill and he saw, the Final Four challenge, and he's like, oh! I mean, he could so taste it. And everybody has the woulda, coulda, shoulda. And you're right in that we shouldn't be results oriented. We may not have anticipated how the swap happened. Swaps, reverse swaps, they are good ideas. I mean, I was positively giddy when Jon pitched the idea of a reverse, because it's like, oh my gosh, you're going to have to make all of these choices in such a small amount of time, and I had forgotten. But yeah, when you add in that element of the stuff, like, frankly, Wendy and that tent to some degree helped decide the game. Who was sleeping in the tent? Who wasn't sleeping in the tent? Who wanted to be in the tent? Who was, from, you were sleeping outside the tent. The survivors were sleeping inside the tent. They had Matt in the tent with them. And, these are the things that, the game ends up hinging on the strangest of things, all that goes back to a reverse swap.
Right. We and I know this comes out in different parts. Winnie and I talked all night about it, and Jill confided in me that no strategy talk went on inside the tent. She goes, we already had Matt before we even got into the tent. But at the same time, Winnie and I both realized, there's a whole tribe, including our friends, that have no survivors. We've got 4 survivors. We spent the night with them. I went on the water walk with Jill and Joel, and that's when I got my impression of them, which they may have gotten too much from me, but at the same time, I'm like, wow, this is 1A and 1B. Of this group, that the way they're talking and the way they're not talking. But I had no problem with Matt. I'm not going to make excuses about Matt going in the tent. I had no problem with Matt going in the tent because it was like a dream of a lifetime for him just to get to hang out with 4 survivors. So I had no problem with that. I still had opportunities to stay in the game. So that's on me.
But I think always
going into Survivor and going into this challenge, if you embrace the twist as an opportunity, then you're going to come out with better results. And to me, sometimes I get caught up in thinking one way, and you got to have 6 plans. You can't have 2 plans. You got to have more than 3. But at the same time, instead of letting a twist stumble you, you've got to embrace it and use it to your advantage. You got to find an outlet to use it to your advantage.
Yeah, no, I know that again, scouring my notes this week, that there were 2 players. The one that jumps immediately to mind is Jenny, who couldn't have been more excited about the swap. Like, she wasn't feeling like she was in the best position before it. Felt like she was in a great one afterwards. And frankly, if her tribe hadn't been so heartily crushed on Saturday, if she gets to the merge, this is somebody who can do some damage. So she took advantage of an opportunity, that the swap presented. Other people, it took them a while to recover from it, but like were should have thrown their hands up, like, I was in such a great spot before, and
that was one of those, yeah.
Yeah, but sleeping arrangements obviously say so much, and that whole tent situation in your tribe. But Wendy was on the outside, but she ended up on the inside ultimately. So.
Yep. So we get to, let's see, that was Friday night. Going into Saturday morning, as much as it was a game, that was such a great opportunity for me as a podcaster to sit and talk with 4 survivors the whole night long. That was pretty awesome. But Saturday comes the fun challenges with the 3 tribes instead of 4. The fun challenges with the sadness of tribal council. People are going to start leaving the game. And we kind of, I don't know who didn't realize it was 2 tribal councilors per event, but we had, being with Moz and the survivors, we got taken right around to the first lockdown area, which coincidentally we were able to hear all the talk on the microphones. So we heard all of Jon's questions and all the comments and the blind side and the idle play and all that kind of stuff, which was kind of neat. The problem for us was Jill was pestering us with questions about how many are left and who's left. And after the first round, I was like, oh, no. And then Matt would continue to answer, and I answered a few times. I'm not guilt-free, but it's like, oh, she's just pegging us for information to find out who she's got to get rid of and who's got to go next. And as the day went on, it's still such an amazing experience getting to hang out with these survivors, but still to play the game. Because at night, they do the hangout conversations, but during the day, it's game on. You know, it's eat, it's rest, it's talk. We even, so far as they asked what challenges did they play last year, and we started preparing for the challenges of last year. That's how these survivors were. It was a great day of 101 Survivor because we'd walk out and have assignments. We'd have to look around and see, do we see puzzle pieces hanging? Do we see boats in the water? Do we see parts over here? So it was really a great day of learning to be a survivor and all of these challenges by how they set us up. So that was the advantage that I got, the blessing that I got of playing with those poor folks as to learning to play the game.
And you touch on something that's I think really needs to be stressed, which is we have been very fortunate, but it's also by design. The survivors who have come and played have been off the charts fantastic. In year one, you had Terry and you had Boo and you had Eric. And, my season, Kathy Sleckman is such a wonderful woman. She was on my tribe. She was actually the Dr. Liza this past season, where when people got voted out, she was there to help you make the transition with your refreshing breath mint.
Yes.
But, we had Matt and Kobe, and they played the game. I mean, I hesitate to say the right way, but they were just there to connect with the fans, but they were there to play hard. And firsthand, David, how hard this last group was really playing. They were working every bit of information they could, but at the same time were being really nice and welcoming and sharing stories. And you talk to Joel about it, and he's like, yeah, we're trying to distract them, as we're going to go and search for idols and whatnot. But also, we just like to talk with them. These are people who are here for a charity event, and they love the show. Why wouldn't I want to talk to them? Getting people like that, and then seeing how they come out of the game and the nice things that they're saying, these have been really quality people who have come and joined us, and we're obviously incredibly grateful.
Yeah, and that's really the last piece of the whole recruitment process. We've got all of these regular applicants, but there's a universe of 380 some survivors now, and they're not all created the same. They're all on the same show, but we always say we're looking for two qualities in the people that come. One is they got to be genuinely nice people, because we want them to interact with the other players like you, David. We want them to interact with the crowd when they're out of the game or on Sunday when everything's over. And the other one is they have to be willing to come and play hard, because we don't want them to just lay down on their sword because these people here want to be on the show and I already was. And as you saw and felt, the 6 that came last year took it to a whole new level. And we talk to them on the phone before we all say yes and make sure they're okay with that. We don't want them just to show up and sign a few autographs. We want them to come and bring their A game. And so last year, I think in particular, I couldn't have even imagined how hard they played. They exceeded my expectations, and I've told them all individually we were so grateful that they did that, but did it in a way where nobody felt like they got stepped on by them. Like, if they beat us because they were better players, then so be it. But, they were great about how they went about their business out there.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, because like I said, I had my chances that I should have done, and I didn't, and they just flat out played the better game. And that's why I hate fans versus favorite seasons, but that's just how it goes. When you put 9 fans against 9 favorites, it's a tough game. But in this situation, I had my chances, and they just played a super game, which is why I have the bug to go back and play again. So
yeah, it was fun talking on Saturday night, heading into the merge with both Dr. Jill and Joel in particular, but all of them really, just talking to them about how hard they were playing, and just that general consensus, like, these people signed up to play Survivor. And if we held back, I mean, what kind of authentic experience is that? So if they can beat us, they're going to have to earn it.
Right.
And it was very heartening to hear that because you could take the foot off the gas pedal, but two of our final three were survivors. So that tells you how focused they were.
Yeah, both Troyzan and Joe, I think Joel did too, said, dude, this is our second chance. That it was right around the time the second chance season was coming about, and they said, we're not going to not go foolhardy. We're there because of what we did, but at the same time, we're playing Survivor again. This is our second chance to play.
It was funny it played out that way because we already had our cast pretty much picked. And then CBS announced that they were doing Second Chance, and we looked at our cast and we said, hey, look, we already have that. So the fact that dovetailed was really kind of cool. And Troy being obviously the one who was fresh off not making the CBS show, I think he especially wanted to prove to himself and to somebody else perhaps that he still has it.
Well, he's definitely got it. I can't wait to watch the video of the rope challenge where he and Brooke and Joel and Bob. That's just a killer. Just watching it makes me tired.
Yeah, no, and there's some photos. I mean, I remember walking up to that challenge after doing an exit interview and seeing, him emerge having won, and he's got these abrasions, and he's bleeding, and just shaking his head like, God, these things are real. Because he knew he might get targeted if he didn't win immunity, and he fought hard. You could see it in how he was approaching it and what the end results were. But backing up for 1 second, John, you touched on something that second chance. It seems like this happens with us periodically in production. We are kicking around ideas, and the next thing we know, they're on the show. The real thing, and it's part of it is just happenstance. But for example, we had decided back in November that we were going to do the barrel challenge, where you had to put the boards over the barrels and whatnot. Next thing you know, Worlds Apart later that season, boom, they're using that challenge, and obviously it had appeared in, I think it was Nicaragua, but these are the kinds of things that we're coming up with stuff. The show is doing it too. I don't want to give any of the other ideas that we've kicked around away, but these are the kinds of things where you get enough smart people in the room, ends up we're either anticipating or just having groupthink with the people who are producing the real show.
Yeah, and David, another little behind the scenes piece of info, the infamous sandbag challenge, which you all hated so much. We moved the location of that pretty much at the last minute. It was supposed to be in the field right next to where you played it, but it had rained all week, and that other field was just completely mud, and there was no way to run it. But the twist that was supposed to be part of that challenge, there were 2 trees on either end of the field, and we were going to have an idol hidden during the challenge, because the one tree had a hollow space underneath. And we were saying, isn't it going to be cool? They're going to be running by with sandbags, and they're going to look down and see this little bag in the hollow of the tree. What are they going to do? And because we had to move it at the last minute, we scrapped the idea of the idol. But as Andy said, then sure enough, here it shows up on Second Chance. And we were like, wow, they must have spies planted on our conversations, because we had already been talking about that.
Yep.
Well, that was a fun challenge. Besides the physical part of it, you got these sticks sticking out of the ground just waiting for you to fall on top of, and then you got the uneven path that you have to run around the wooden sharp trees and sticks and everything else. But it's part of the game. It's an endurance challenge. Watching that challenge in the game wears me out, and believe me, running it for just a few minutes wears me out. But it was diverse. Another hat tip to you guys for your planning of your challenges. You never had 2 killer challenges back to back. You gave us a break with a mental challenge. Then you did an endurance challenge, you did a hold the rope challenge, and then you killed us again on a physical challenge. So it was, you're not coming out to do the egg toss, or to toss sandbags at blocks. You're coming out to play Survivor. And like I said, I love Troyzan's comment, dude. This is so real. He says, at least we get breaks on the real show. We get 2 days off, And then he was just so worn out between every challenge.
Well, and I mean, a lot of what we do, and one of the things that is really helpful having sort of Jon as the guiding force behind this, everything needs to be fair. We come at it from that direction, and that we know that there's different kinds of Survivor players. We know what kinds of people we have on our hands from the whole casting piece of it, and so we want there to be, a moment where someone who knows a lot about Survivor can shine. We want a puzzle for those, puzzle makers to stand up and have their moments. And we want a challenge beast, to have a challenge where strength is the sole deciding factor. And obviously you shake it up from year to year, from day to day within the challenge. But you want to give everyone an opportunity to shine.
Well, getting to watch Sunday from a fan's perspective, to me it was almost a perfect day. Every challenge went off really well. I loved when Jill stepped off to get her coffee. I wish somebody else would have dropped off just to tick her off and gone into the water first and taken the coffee from her. That would have been hilarious. But I know that especially all the fans were fighting for immunity because I think they knew they were in trouble from the Saturday night non-conversations, or the fun. I would have loved to have been a fly on that tree for Saturday night. But Sunday I just thought was epic. And it was all done by, 2 or 3 o'clock. It's amazing how many challenges they got in, before the final challenge. And the final challenge was probably my favorite. The multi-stage, up and down the stairs, the puzzles, the math, the keys. It was just epic. It was unbelievably how good that was.
Yeah, and that one was Kevin Thurber. Like I said, many of them we designed and Kevin built. That was really Kevin's baby from the get-go. He came up with the steps. He came up with the decoder thing, and we just loved that one so much after he laid it out that we said that needs to be the last challenge because it embodies everything that we all love about Survivor. Like you said, multi-stage and all that. So that was really Kevin's shining moment. And that's why I called him out there. As much as he hated that, I want everybody to know that he was the guy that made that one happen.
Well, in the after party at Bob's house, I got to talk to him for a few minutes, and I thanked him for not including the wall. I'd been looking at that wall. I had nightmares about that wall. I've seen that video so many times. I'm looking at all the hand grips, the places you can try to get over the wall, and I said, that's going to be my Achilles heel if we have to do that. I even talked to Joel about it, and Joel's like, are you sure you can get over that wall? You're a big dude. I said, I know I'm a big dude. I'll get over that wall if I have to get over that wall, and I just practically hugged and kissed Kevin on the cheek. Thank you for not letting them include the wall this year. And he's like, yeah, they were all new challenges. He said, we only included 1 or 2 from last year. I said, I know, because I remembered last year's challenges, and you didn't use any of them. So
Did you have a strategy? How are you going to get over that wall?
Well, there were handholds to the outside, right? That was going to be my strategy, to look for those. There was nets on the outside. I watched Kathy try to get over that wall, which was hilarious. There's just all kinds. I don't know. I'm not sure. It was one of those adrenaline moments where I could see myself catapulting over the wall, and I just pray that actually happened, or else the wall would come down when I ran into it. One way or another, I was going to get past that wall. And then the log over the water. That one, too, I was just going to make a break and run for it, because I figured by that time I'd have put my tribe behind, and I would have had to sprint across the log in 2 steps and try to get to the other side.
Yeah, well, it's funny, having playing in season 2 and then helping with production for season 3. Because it wasn't only me, there were some other players as well who had anticipated a lot of the challenges and sort of done the thinking of, well, season 1 they were figuring out what challenges they could do. Season 2 they're probably going to replicate a bunch of them and fine-tune. And so part of my pitch coming onto the production team was, like, how much can we change? I mean, and all bets are off at this point. You've seen it now. We can change them all. You can, use some and do twists. I mean, everything is fair game. There's nothing we can't accomplish. If we can come up with a better cart puzzle than the actual show, because Kevin Thurber did, that thing was ridiculous.
Yes.
We dream teamed that thing. It was crazy and it was amazing. We had a cart that floated in water. and you had to swim it across a body of water. They haven't done that on the show. That should tell you, if you're interested in playing, you have to be ready for anything. I mean, Kevin, and we just added someone to the production team, someone with a lot of experience in this area. So, all bets are off, man.
We even had a strategy laid out for doing the slingshot and the nets, where you would launch the things. Tarzan was going to do the slingshot, but give us signals as to which way he was going to go. We had hand signals worked out. This is what we did between challenges. This is how cool it was. This is how hard those four were playing. We were working out everything for different challenges, and then we never got to do it because we'd walk out and say, "Where's the slingshots?" No slingshots. Where's this one?
Just so you know, Bezo, we had hand signals. They work for like the first 2 shots, and then everyone else figures it out. But that challenge was awesome. I took some pretty hard shots in that one, but it is, you need to have those challenges where people have to mix it up a little bit. Again, you have choices to make in the middle of that scrum. Do you, like Becca did in our season, put yourself on everybody's map? Because you're paying so hard on everyone's radar because she was playing so strong and so hard and shoving people out of the way and bodying them, and it comes out afterwards she was an All-American at in lacrosse, and it's like, oh, that makes sense. She's got to go, and you can use that information. So it's fascinating. That challenge was awesome.
So, do you have anything else, John?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So wrap it up Sunday. Like I said, a bunch of great challenges. The jury was formed, and it was just awesome. Like I said, even though I was out, it was still fun to watch. It was a great finish with great challenges, and like I totally agree, the last challenge was my favorite. It was an epic challenge, saved for the right moment, and a well-deserved winner. I was trying to get to Wendy as soon as I could, and I told her, because she looked at me like, "Are you going to be mad?" And I said, "I am so proud of you for making the right decision to vote me out and go with them, because you did the right move to get yourself to the end and win the game." And I was hoping I'd have been happy with either of the three of them winning, because Joel and Nina played so hard. But at the same time, I was pulling for Wendy. She was my sister from Virginia, and I just wanted her to pull it out because that was the decision she made, and I was hoping it worked out for her, and it did.
Yeah, I mean, there's no such thing as a bad loss in Survivor, right? She got there, she sat there, she said what she needed to say, seeing everything unfold so quickly, I mean, that's one of the things that firsthand, that it seems like the days last for a really long time because so much is happening. But as they're happening, particularly on Saturday and Sunday, you just have to have things in place. And people are getting voted out rapid fire, but the drama keeps escalating. You can see how invested everybody is. Like the number of people who, I mean, you have your hooks in the audience when Brooke and Joel are starting the fire challenge, and there's this sudden stampede. Everyone goes up to the rock wall, and they're all looking for a spot so they can see these two people light fires with all these people, and people are shouting out advice on how to do it, and because they're fighting over a spot in the final three, and that mattered to the players very clearly. But the entire audience and the entire jury at that point is trying to get as close as they can to be able to see what's going on. So it's fascinating, how everything culminates in Sunday, because it does become that individual game, and the story just changes. You don't have a week between episodes, right? You suddenly are in the merge game, and the entire merge game is unfolding so fast. It's fascinating.
Yeah, Dwayne is apparently back up, and he's in our chat room right now talking to Nina, who's in our chat room, and he said, "Tell John I said hi, and to stop letting Andy and David dominate the conversation." So,
sorry.
Well, we knew that coming in with Andy. That's why.
Welcome to my world, David. Every Monday on the conference call, I got to deal with this. So.
Yep. As John announced at the last phone call that we had, sometimes you just have to let Andy just keep talking, and then he just peters out.
When my picture goes still, it's when I've frozen it and gotten up and got a drink and gone talk to my family for a while. Then I come back and Andy raps up what he's saying. So, but anyway, that's about the end of our season. Is there anything else you want to talk about before we talk about June of 2016 from last? Anything you want to talk about last season or the seasons before?
I've just been so happy with you guys in particular who have played the game and keep coming back. I know, David, you already talked to me about coming and bringing family to volunteer, and Andy's done that as well. And I just got to tell you how much that means to me, because, like I said, I really wanted this to be an experience for Survivor fans. And the fact that people keep coming back and want to help that happen for other people, that really says everything to me. And it enables us to do more and more each year. So, I'm going to make the appeal to all of our 3 seasons worth of prior contestants pretty soon about coming back. And it's not a tough sell for me. It's basically just telling folks, here's the dates. Can you make it to Maine? And I don't know, more than half your cast was back from last year, right, Andy? And so I'm just hoping the season 3 folks come out and support it the same way, because the more hands, the more neat things we can do and create all that excitement that we're talking about for the next folks that we don't even know yet for 2016.
Yeah, and that's, we had, I think, hit about 75% of our cast being there, and you touched on this, David. It becomes this family that you're reuniting with. Everybody is just so excited to see one another, and you talk to people who have played the real Survivor, and they talk about that. Like, people don't know and understand until they go through it too, and then it happens so quickly that these bonds are made. And Bezo is already talking about coming together in June. Everyone's sort of clearing the docket and making sure that they're going to be out there. And I had my wife with a baby last year came, and Jared's going to bring his kid next year, and the year after it's going to be Jersey. It's like everyone just wants to be there and hang out and see the look on the newbies' eyes, both before and after as they come out. It's like you're now part of the family.
Exactly. Speaking of those newbies, Jon, what do you want to tell us about next year?
Well, we're going to open up the application, I'm going to say next Wednesday, which will be the 6th of January. As we talked about at the beginning, we're finishing up some video. We hope to have that all up on the website all at the same time. Barring any technical glitches, if you're interested in applying, next Wednesday it'll go live. We're going to have a window till the end of February to get your applications in. And then the event itself will start on Thursday, June the 23rd, and we'll run those 4 days through that Sunday. And if you don't make it, as Matt told his story very well, put your name in as an alternate. Try to keep that weekend open, because anything can happen. And if you're local to Maine, even if it's within a drive, as we've been talking about, it's a neat spectator event. So, even if you had your heart set on playing, you don't make it. Sure is fun to come out and watch, too. So a bunch of different ways you can get involved.
Yeah, especially if you get to watch it and then play it the next year.
Yeah.
That would have been even cooler to be out there in person and then come back and try and play it.
Yeah, well, and I think, was it Katie who had Dream Team the year before? And so, those people who, get a taste for it and then come out, again, watching and then meeting, the production staff is very accessible and ready and happy to talk if we're not immediately doing something. So you can put the bug in our ear about how excited you are to be involved. 2 other things. One, I think I said this earlier, but if you're applying, be as comprehensive and infuse as much of your personality into your answers as you can. Give us as much information as we can to be able to make a good decision, and the video will help with that. And the other thing, this is good news. I literally just got a message from Caleb, our editor. Apparently, there's a second draft of the trailer video for me to watch when we wrap up here, and so that might be hitting the interwebs before too long.
Yeah, and we've already started talking to quite a few survivors about who's going to come. I'm not going to drop any names, but there's a lot of folks excited. We actually now even have survivors talking to us about coming to the event, which is kind of a weird experience. Where Richard Hatch said he's going to be back this year, not as a contestant, but he did our exit interviews for us in Andy's season, and he wants to come back. And Dr. Jill and Nina have both already made plans to be back. So the number of survivors on hand in 2016, I think, will be a new record as well. So even if you just like to come and be in the crowd and hang out with survivors, it's going to be a really good year to do that.
Yeah, at the after party Sunday night, I know Joel was naming several survivors he was going to call and ask them why they hadn't come out yet, that they needed to get in touch with you guys. And Troy's was saying the same thing. Yep. So it's awesome. Like I said, it's a community. It's an extension of the survivor community, and it's just a great bunch of people. Yeah, no, one of the most enduring memories from that Sunday at the end of my season was Sandra kicking back around a ring full of a ring of chairs, eating barbecue, and her just telling stories about playing with Russell and heroes versus villains stories, and even some older stories, and it's just they're there as ambassadors, but they just love talking the game. And you touched on this, David, that everywhere you turn, it's people who understand your passion for this show and the game itself. And we've got survivors who it's like I don't what can I do to help? Can I be a part of production? And how cool is that? Like the word is out. Every now and again you'll hear survivors doing podcasts, and they'll talk about the event even if they haven't played it themselves. And so again, we're very fortunate that the word is spreading because of people like you and people like the survivors who've played with us. Well, this has only made me want to play more again the second time, which I knew it would. But that never goes away, David. It never goes away. Oh, the night after. My nightmares started the night after of what I could have, should have, would have. But anyway, I'm telling you, it was a week later when I woke up on a day that I was off, and I woke up and had to think about, was that a dream? Am I getting ready to fly out? Am I still out there? Where am I waking up at Ponderosa? Am I waking up at Dan's house? Where am I waking up? So it was such an effective event for me, especially. But thank you guys for doing this. It'll be put out on YouTube immediately. It'll be out on iTunes probably in the first thing in the morning. To all of our listeners, all of our subscribers, thank you all for listening. Especially if you made it all the way to the end, good for you. That means you could probably play the game of Survivor. But thank you guys, especially Andy and Jon, for coming on and doing this. We're going to sign off here, but stay on for a minute if you would. And do y'all got any final words or anything you want to say? I just wanted to say I know that some of the people who played in this previous in your season, they were kicking around in the chat room and wanting to ask questions and whatnot. And I'm sorry that we didn't get to a bit of Q&A, but we're always there to answer whatever questions you've got. Again, thank you to you and the rest of your cast, because we may set things in motion, but you guys create the game. So, and having played the season before and really hoping that we could replicate something special, you guys created your own thing, and it was sort of a privilege to be able to see it play out. Anything else, Jon?
DurhamWarriors.com, DurhamWarriorsChallenge.com. Go there, check it out. Video, pictures from prior years, and that's where you'll find the application for 2016.
Awesome. All right, thank you guys.
All right, thanks, David.
Thanks.